Now, one more time, UMBC style. Good morning, everybody. I love this crowd. Great to see all of you here in this beautiful Black Box Theater in our relatively new Performing Arts and Humanities building. Relatively new, it's 2-3 years old, so it's the most recent building until December when we open our event center on the other part of campus. Some of you have seen the construction going on. Welcome to GridX 2017. And it is actually our second time that we have this GridX event for you. We first conceived it last year as part of our 50th anniversary, and I was one of the people that helped organize, and we were really happy how well it went and that we were done with it, except a lot of people called back and said, that was really cool, can we have it again? And now it's going to be an annual event at Homecoming, so we are really thrilled to be back, and we have some great speakers lined up. The goal of this series is to provide you a look behind the scenes of the research, the scholarship, and the creative achievement here at UMBC, both by featuring some of our faculty, but also very proud, especially in Homecoming, by featuring some of our really outstanding alumni. And you get to know 9 of them today. You see the pictures up there, and we will reveal shortly of who they all are. Over the next 2 hours, we'll take you from outer space to inner space. We'll take you from black holes in the universe to a pacemaker for the brain. We'll take you from a maker space to the classroom, and from understanding the social life of speech to let you experience the complexity of creating a dance. It's going to be exactly what UMBC is all about. We do STEM, and as our president says, we do STEAM here, so the arts are a big part, a very integral part of what we do, and the humanities fit so well into all this. You may see from the program that we got 3 sets of 3 speakers, so it's 30 minutes, then there's a short intermission for you to stretch your legs. You are highly encouraged and very welcome to stay the whole time, but some of you may want to go or need to go to another event. And then after 10-15 minutes, we start with the next set and then with the third set. So that's the program for today. I hope that you will enjoy yourself, but I can guarantee you that you will learn something today, and that's really the goal of GridX and of these 2 hours that we have put together for you. And on that note, to kick off the first session that we have, I'm going to ask our Dean, Bill LaCourse, who is the Dean of the College of Natural and Mathematical Sciences. Bill.
Thank you, Carl. Well, it's indeed hopefully this is on. It's indeed a pleasure today for me to introduce our 3 speakers, the first third of these the sets. I threw that number in there so Freeman can, I'll always throw something with math in there for Freeman's sake. So it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Kaf Girassa. He's an associate professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at the Duke University School of Medicine. He was the first African American to complete a PhD in neurobiology at Duke University. His research interests focus on using neurotechnology to understanding how changes in the brain produce neurological and mental illness. In 2009, Dr. Girassa obtained an MD from the Duke University School of Medicine. He is a product of UMBC's nationally renowned Meyerhoff Scholarship Program. And while he was doing all that, he also had the time to be a conference champion in the long jump, an academic All-American, and student body president. Just last week, Dr. Girassa was recognized as one of UMBC's distinguished alumni in a reception held in this very same building. We are delighted that he has accepted our invitation to come back home twice this month. Dr. Girassa has served on the board of directors of the Student National Medical Association, a national organization dedicated to the eradication of healthcare disparities. Through his service, Kaf participated in numerous programs geared towards exposing youth to science and technology and providing health education for underserved communities. Dr. Girassa's ultimate goal is to combine his research, medical training, and community experience to improve outcomes for diverse communities suffering from neurological and psychiatric illnesses. I give you Dr. Kaf Girassa.
His friends called him CJ. He was 19 years old when he started getting messages from the TV and radio telling him to kill himself and his family. Just a couple months earlier, he graduated valedictorian of his class. He went off to college full of the hopes that he could change the world. But soon after arriving, he started having problems concentrating. He failed his first semester of classes, and his parents, knowing that there's something wrong with their brilliant son, Took him to see a pediatrician, then a neurologist, then a psychiatrist. No answers. The only thing that they did know was that CJ was in no condition to go back to school, so they kept him home that next semester. One day when they were all sitting at the kitchen table, CJ got up, walked up to his bedroom on the second story, opened the window, and jumped. His parents were still sitting at the table when they heard the crash outside in the bushes. CJ survived without major injuries, but his parents, absolutely terrified to leave him by himself, took 12-hour shifts watching him. After a week and a half, they were exhausted, and CJ wasn't getting any better. He was now seeing angels and demons. The pictures on his wall screamed at him all day long. They told him that he was worthless, that he deserved to die. His parents were out of options. They didn't know what else to do. And so they decided to take him to an emergency room. As they were driving over in the car, CJ reached over, opened the back door, and tried to jump out. It was his second suicide attempt in a week and a half. His mom just happened to be sitting next to him, and she was able to pull the car door closed. It was the longest drive of their life. Finally, they made it to the emergency room, and after sitting there for 2 days, they were admitted to my inpatient psychiatric unit. When I met CJ, he'd have long conversations with the walls, each one ending the same way, with him begging for them to let him live. I'd seen these set of symptoms before, and so I started CJ on an antipsychotic. And over the course of several weeks, CJ went from being critically ill to being severely ill. His parents were at a loss. Why wasn't CJ any better? CJ had schizophrenia. So I studied myself. As a psychiatrist, you can never predict how a family is going to respond to getting this sort of news. Some treat it like a death sentence. Others respond with confusion. But CJ's parents responded in a way that I'd never encountered. As soon as the words schizophrenia left my mouth, his parents froze. I tried to walk him through it and explain the diagnosis and the prognosis. And CJ's parents looked at me, and his dad, with almost an act of defiance, looked at me and said, pick another diagnosis. Maybe bipolar disorder, maybe early onset Alzheimer's. I kept trying to explain schizophrenia to them and the symptoms, and finally his mom paused and looked at me and said, Dr. D, you just don't understand. If you diagnose CJ with that illness, you don't understand the stigma he'll have to deal with. You don't understand the shame. You will ruin his life. But I did understand the stigma and the shame. My family has struggled with mental illness for generations. Out of one of my parents' siblings, 3 out of 4 of them carries a diagnosis of schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or depression. I remember what it was like to commit a family member when I was in graduate school, and I remember what it was like when another one went missing, only for us to find them in an alleyway hallucinating 6 months later. I understand the shame. It's so palpable in my family that every time I give a talk, they ask for me never to identify them by name. I understand the shame because I spent most of my 20s absolutely terrified that any given day I could wake up hallucinating, or that I could hear voices. And finally, when I passed that critical window and turned 30, that critical window for developing a psychiatric illness, that fear became replaced with the fear that one day one of my children or my nieces or my nephews would be counted amongst the 20 to 30% of Americans diagnosed with a mental illness annually. So you see, it's not curiosity that leads me to study the organ that's most linked to mental illness. It's fear. The brain is made up of over 200 billion cells. Those cells and who we are interactions with each other. The nature of love and curiosity is locked within the organ that's the size of a piece of hair. For centuries, philosophers and scientists have tried to understand how this organ works. We've made a lot of progress. We now understand that there are differences between your left brain and your right brain when it comes to things like movement and speech and curiosity. But it turns out there was something that those early scientists and philosophers didn't understand about the brain. That there was this organizing principle that they couldn't see or touch. Electricity. Electricity is defined as a movement of charge. And what is remarkable is that it turns out if you think about one of the most debilitating mental disorders there are, this is the most debilitating disorder in the world, depression, the best treatment for depression is actually putting electricity directly into the brain. Now, you might be surprised to hear that this treatment, classically thought of electroconvulsive therapy or shock therapy, is still used at medical centers all throughout the country. So this brings me to the question I'd like to pose today. What if mental disorders are disorders of electricity? Electricity is defined as a movement of charge in the brain. Charge is made up of chemicals. Those chemicals are sodium, potassium, chloride ions, and calcium. Just under half of those cells are able to move the charges back and forth across their surface to generate electrical pulses. So you see in the brain, chemicals is directly related to the electrical communication between brain cells. For the last few decades, psychiatrists have focused on these chemicals. It's why you hear about things like chemical imbalances. But for neuroscientists, the holy grail is understanding how those billions of electrical pulses organize themselves to generate thoughts and feelings and emotions and movement. In principle, if we can understand how this process happens in a normal setting, we can then figure out how this process becomes dysfunctional in the case of mental illness. Now, for example, let's say you wanted to understand an electrical system, like a computer. You might take it apart, right? When you're young, we call it breaking things. When you're a little older, we have really cool terms for this. It's called reverse engineering. But the principle is the same. But by studying each of the individual pieces, we can figure out how they work together. Now, as hopefully logic would dictate, before you started taking the computer apart, you would unplug it. And you might really understand how the motherboard was organized and structured and the hard drive, but you actually wouldn't understand how a construct like the internet worked, because the computer would have to be plugged in and functioning to understand how it's working. Classically, we've studied the brain with the power off. When we began to study the brain with the power on, we realized that there were little brain waves, almost like these rhythms that you could observe in the brain. And these rhythms work together in the same way that a conductor can allow all the instruments in a symphony orchestra to work together to produce music. These little rhythms were working together to allow brain cells to coordinate, to produce emotions and thoughts and feelings. So that brings me to the question that I'd really like to pose today. I'm a scientist, yes. I'm a psychiatrist, yes, but I'm also an engineer, actually trained here at UMBC. And what if these mental illnesses are actually not only a problem of electricity, but a problem in this brain metronomic system? You can see here how this metronomic system could work. So on the left, you see the brain wave, and every time the brain wave hits the top, we have the cells in the green fire, and every time the brain wave hits the bottom, you have the cells in the red fire. And you could see that the green cells and the red cells are coordinated together because of this brain wave. Now, it turns out, as scientists began to study this process, they found that this process exists in the human brain, it exists in animals, it exists in mice and other rodents, and you can also find that when you take animal models of disease, that this process becomes dysfunctional. So then the question is simple. If psychiatric illness is due to a disorder in the brain metronomic system, then our job as a brain engineer is pretty simple. The question becomes, can we find where these brain metronomes are broken in the case of illness, and can we fix them? In my lab, we accomplish this by implanting electrodes, each the size of a piece of hair, into the brains of animals. And then we're able to record electrical activity all throughout the brain as the animals are going through various behavioral tasks. We can then change genes in the animals to give them genes that give risk for mental illness, or we can expose them to stress or drugs of abuse. And then we use a tool called machine learning to understand the patterns in which electricity is organized in the animal's brain. Finally, we've developed stimulators that once we find where the pattern is dysfunctional, we can correct the electrical rhythms in the animal's brain and restore normal behavior. Now, I can imagine what you're thinking. CJ isn't a mouse, and neither is my loved one. The mouse doesn't hallucinate, it doesn't get guilty, it doesn't feel sad. But I don't think that's the point at all. I think that in the same way that we can use a mouse's heart to understand cardiac rhythms so we can develop new treatments like calcium channel blockers and pacemakers, we can use brain rhythms to generate new treatments that might one day be helpful for people like CJ. So CJ managed to pull through. He was fortunate in several ways. He had a loving family, he responded well to treatment, and he got really good psychiatric care early on. But for far too many people in this country, the best treatments we have available just aren't good enough. We need cures for psychiatric disorders. But what if we thought about this all wrong? What if psychiatric disorders are due to dysfunctional electrical processing in the brain? Well, in the future that I see, scientific progress will have eliminated stigma, and progress would have gotten rid of shame. In the future that I see, our brothers or our sisters, our parents, our nieces, and our nephews would have lived out their life's greatest dreams. Because in the future that I see, we won't simply treat psychiatric disorders by tuning electricity, we will cure them. Thank you.
It's now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Christine Mallinson. She's a professor of language, literacy, and culture at UMBC. Her interdisciplinary research examines the intersections of language and culture, focusing on English language diversity in the United States. She is the author and editor of 3 books, among other publications, and has created a free app for teachers called Valuable Voices. She also is the author of BaltimoreLanguage.com, a multimedia site about linguistic diversity in the city. And I personally have already fallen in love with her because she's very sympathetic to my New England accent and has made me feel right at home. And so here she is to present on the social life of speech.
Good morning. I want to take you back to a very clear memory that I have in my mind from when I was about 4 years old. And I was watching Sesame Street. And I heard the one word that would change my life forever. And that word was coffee. And the reason that I picked up on this word was when I was watching Sesame Street, I heard somebody say it like this, coffee. And I was growing up in North Carolina, and when I was growing up, I heard the word pronounced more like this, coffee. And then I thought about my dad, who is from Pennsylvania, who says the word like this, coffee. And my grandparents, who were immigrants from Germany, who said the word cafe. And so that really got me thinking as a kid. It wasn't just that words can have different pronunciations, but as I would learn later, that the way that we use language can vary along social lines, along lines of age and where you come from and the language that you speak originally at birth, and gender and culture and ethnicity. So I decided to get my PhD in this stuff. That's me at my kindergarten graduation. And I knew at that point that I wanted to study something about language. I knew that I was fascinated by this question. I didn't yet know the term sociolinguist, which is the term that I use now to describe what I do. But I did know that I wanted to study the social life of speech. So when it comes to the social life of speech, I think nobody says it better than the great Toni Morrison, who says, "We die, that may be the meaning of life, but we do language, that may be the measure of our lives." So what does it mean to do language? Well, we do language in all sorts of different ways. We do it differently all day. We do language according to who we are as human beings, and we use language according to our social context in ways that express who we are as people. We do language with our families, perhaps our first and most influential site of learning how to do language. We do language with our friends and our colleagues. And very importantly, for our purposes, we do language at school. This is particularly relevant in situations where the culture of the teacher and the culture of the students and their linguistic backgrounds are not always the same. And this is the issue that I have dedicated the past decade of my research to, which is exploring how can we help teachers support culturally and linguistically diverse students. These are real questions that teachers have asked us. They know that these questions are paramount and important in their classrooms. So teachers are asking us things like, my students tend to write how they speak. How can I help them? And how can I help empower students' voices and help them retain who they are? And how do I deal with tricky situations such as if I tell them to use proper English, what happens when they take the very implicit statement that's right there under the surface that suggests that the way that they use language is improper somehow? These are excellent questions, and it is so good that teachers are asking these questions and looking for the answers, because we know from the research in linguistics and education that when teachers are not aware of these issues, that there can be damaging consequences. So we know that all of us, all listeners, hold implicit biases about the way that other people talk. And this is not endemic to teachers, but it is very important for teachers. When we prefer listeners who sound like ourselves and can hold bias against speakers and can hold bias against speakers who sound different from ourselves. In the classroom, this can have difficult and challenging situations. So we might have a situation where there are miscommunications between teacher and student, or where there are difficult interactions, or disputes over who is listening or who is showing respect. This is a big contributor for achievement gaps, so-called achievement gaps, otherwise known as opportunity gaps, for students who are underrepresented in education, including higher education, particularly students of color. So we see how language directly can lead to behaviors like withdrawal, silence, lower performance in school on the part of students, and on the part of teachers, it can lead to lower expectations and the miscommunications that I mentioned earlier. If students believe that their language and culture is valued, then they know that they are valued and they are more likely to value school. But the converse is also true. So it is incumbent upon us in educational settings to make sure that we're sending the message that students and their entire backgrounds are valued and that they belong. So we take a strengths-based perspective in our work that really emphasizes the fact that linguistic diversity is a resource, not a deficit. It is something that students bring to the table that reflects the diversity and the cultural vibrancy of our communities. And when I say we, this is my co-author, Ann Charity Hudley, who's now at UC Santa Barbara, and together we have worked with teachers for over a decade, hundreds of teachers, to develop strategies to help them implement culturally and linguistically supportive and sustaining techniques in their classrooms. These are some pictures of some of the teachers that we have worked with, including these teachers right here who are from Baltimore. And we've written 2 books for educators that are written for a more general audience that really present this material in ways that they can understand. So we've come up with 3 types of strategies for how we can communicate this information to teachers. One is, how can we get all students to value who they are and what they bring to the table linguistically? The second is, how can we marshal that as a resource to help them learn the standardized English that everyone needs to know to be able to succeed? No one here would be in this room if we didn't know standardized English or master the linguistic codes that are used at school. But we need to use students' resources as a bridge to get there. And then third, we want to help all students, even students who might consider themselves just plain speakers, or that they don't have any linguistic diversity themselves. We want all students to understand and respect and value linguistic diversity. So I can't cover all the amazing things that some of the teachers that we've worked with have been doing, but I can give you some highlights and show you the impact on their students. We've got teachers who have been using our techniques to teach advanced vocabulary terms to their middle school students right here in Baltimore. Words like witty and optimistic, by helping them focus on telling a story of who they are. And this technique of a culture words box, where students bring in words from their own culture and communities, and then they discuss them as a class, and that's their linguistic warm-up for the day, and they use it in their writing prompts. As this teacher put it, we can't take away students' language because that's who they are. We've also got techniques where teachers are using the information we bring them to help their students become language investigators. So they investigate, as you can see on these charts, the way that these students speak in their own communities in Baltimore, and the students love this activity. Nothing gets them going more than you telling the teacher how it is that you speak in your community and at home. The students are doing these basically analyses of grammatical patterns and pronunciations, and then they're using that as a way to compare it and contrast it to standard English, and they're getting a richer sense of their own wide linguistic repertoires, as well as how to succeed in school. We also have teachers who are using this, as you might well imagine, when studying great works of literature. Students can apply information about how language varies to the study of reading books like To Kill a Mockingbird and Their Eyes Were Watching God, and so many works of great literature that have language variation in them. And students and teachers, it's very important to have the skills to be able to talk about what patterns it is that they're seeing on the page. We also have teachers who are using this in areas where they're doing a historical analysis. So this teacher, a 4th grade teacher, had her students taking a look at actually I think this was more like a first grade teacher, having their students look at this book and that was set in the 19th century and come up with what they called 19th century settler English. So this was a way for them to get into the novel with sort of a different entrance point that they might otherwise have had, and she said it led to a growing appreciation and greater respect for the ways that people speak differently among her students. As Dean LaCours mentioned, we have an app for that. We've created an app that has very robust strategies that teachers can use all or part of in the classroom to figure out, the pressing question for teachers is, yes, but what can I do in class tomorrow? So this app answers that question. You can go on, download it, take a look, and try to use it in your own classrooms. And then, of course, if you do, please tell us how it went. We also are doing some of this work right here in Baltimore. I have this blog called BaltimoreLanguage.com that's been picked up in the media. There was a great whole series on language in Baltimore that was done by the Baltimore Sun last year, and that has actually been picked up in schools right here in Baltimore, where kids are, again, becoming language investigators and studying their own language. We've also done this right here at UMBC. Some of my amazing students who are right there in the background helped create this video called Voices of UMBC, which has already been viewed thousands of times, that talks about how our own linguistic diversity is a resource right here among our student body. The entire film was student-run, student-created, and with students who were interviewed. I want to leave you with this parting thought, which is that I see as our mission for educators in K-12 settings and in higher education is to give the students the tools that they need to succeed on the tests that we give them and that we require of them, while sustaining, while empowering their diverse voices, so that we can support the next William Faulkner, the next Zora Neale Hurston, the next Martin Luther King Jr., Toni Morrison, Junot Diaz, Flannery O'Connor, so that we can have all our students with all their diverse voices right here in the front row of our classes at UMBC. Thank you.
I am proud to introduce Dr. Nilanjan Banerjee, who's an associate professor in computer science and electrical engineering. Dr. Banerjee is an expert in mobile and embedded sensor systems. He is the recipient of numerous awards, including a National Science Foundation Career Award, a Microsoft Research Software Engineering Innovations Award, a UMBC's Up and Coming Inventor Award, a Yahoo Outstanding Dissertation Award, and received the Best Undergraduate Thesis Award from the Indian Institute of Technology in Kharagpur. His research and commercialization effort have been highlighted in several news outlets, including the Baltimore Sun, the Washington Post, and the MIT Technology Review. He's going to talk to us about when what you wear understands you. And I know this for a fact when I go home and I put on my old sweatshirt, because it understands me.
It's going to change. 2007, January, Steve Jobs released this thing called the iPhone and called it a magical product. Since then, this particular device called the smartphone has become the center of our existence. Can you just imagine a day that you wake up and you don't look at your smartphone screen for your Facebook updates or your Twitter updates or your emails, or for some of you, the Tinder updates? Well, the revolution of the smartphone took place at 2007. And 10 years from then, we are at the brink of yet another revolution, the revolution of the next generation wearables. Just imagine a scenario where you will get your Tinder updates on your sweatshirt, for instance. So what does this buy us? Where are we going with this? So the goal of today's talk here, from my perspective, is to take you through a brief journey of what these wearables can do and what the technical as well as the ethical challenges are when you're building these wearables. So just imagine a scenario where the sensors that you deal with are not necessarily wearable, but are part of what you wear. So I'm still wearing my jeans fabric, and it's made up of cotton. But if I replace this cotton fabric with silver-coated nylon, what changes does it make? My jeans is still my jeans, But now my jeans is equipped with thousands, if not millions, of sensors. You can think of these as very small computers just looking at your body and doing various things for you: physiological monitoring, activity monitoring, and in many cases, trying to understand your body language. So these sensors in the long run would be able to figure out that I'm actually at Starbucks hiding from my students. Or possibly I'm in a party when I should be working on my homework. This sort of body language recognition using these sensors, the type that we are building in our lab, can be especially useful for a specific population group, folks who are suffering from spinal cord injury and paralyses. These are individuals who have very limited mobility. And this particular device that we are building as part of our clothing can then be used as an input device. Just think about a scenario where I get rid of this particular clicker, right? So when I look at this clicker, there are like 15 buttons on this. I have to figure out which button I have to click to essentially navigate through my slides. Can I replace that with my clothing, where through some intuitive gestures on top of my clothing, I can slide that through all of my slides? And you can use this also as an input device where you can control your environment. So people suffering from spinal cord injury, for instance, would have very limited mobility on their upper extremities. This could be just movement of their fingers or even muscular twitching. So if these sensors are actually built into your clothing, then they can capture these subtle movements. And then you can use this for controlling your lights, your appliances, your televisions, making a nurse call or even a 911 call. And if we take it to the next extremity, for people who are suffering from higher level spinal cord injury, they only have tongue movement as their only input modality. If we replace these textile sensors with micro radars, which are the same sensors that you use in your car to detect if you're jamming into another car or not, it can detect muscular movements which correspond to your tongue gestures. And if you're able to build software on top of these tongue gestures, then we can use them as an input modality, again, to do everything that this clicker can do. Another area where wearable sensors would have a profound impact is healthcare. So an average age of a baby boomer today is around 60 years, and they're going to retire at some point. And there are statistics which show that there would be at least 20% of them spending time in a doctor's clinic once a month. Just think about the amount of resources that you would require in a doctor's clinic to cater to this population. Wouldn't it be nice if that clinic could be taken to your house? So we are building sensors that you can potentially strap onto your ankle and go to bed. And in the morning, it will tell you how fragmented your sleep is, how poor your sleep is, and whether you're prone to sleep-related disorders like restless leg syndrome, attention deficit, hypertension, and even things like cardiac issues. So in essence, what we are trying to do is take this clinic out from the doctor's office and bring it into your home. So now I don't have to go to a sleep lab, wear all of these sensors in an alien environment, pay like thousands of dollars, and do the same thing at home. We can also apply these sensors in a driving scenario to save lives. So there are statistics out there which shows that about 1 million people die every year in the United States due to road fatalities, which amounts to about 3,500 people per day dying due to road accidents. Some people say that the hurricane that happened last month actually saved lives because nobody was on the road. So some of these sensors that we are building for clothing can also be built into car seats, can also be built into headrests of car seats. And it can detect through whole body movement whether you're driving distracted, whether you're driving drunk, whether you're driving drowsy. And it can potentially give you alerts on ways through which you can drive safely. It seems that most of the work in building these sensors is a computer science problem or a computer engineering problem. That's not true at all. In fact, building a wearable system requires knowledge from varied areas. You have to build the sensors, You have to build the hardware on top of the sensors. You have to build the signal processing algorithms that take this data and make meaning out of it. Then you have to build applications on top of it to make them useful. And more importantly, all of these sensors are useless unless people use it. So you have to have human-computer interaction folks as well as design folks looking at the problem and making these sensors usable for common people. So I can enumerate almost every department on this campus that can dive into this problem and make this problem solvable in the long run. It's a strictly interdisciplinary problem to be solved. So in addition to these technical challenges that I talked about, there are also moral and ethical issues that you need to address. Do I really want my students to know that I'm in Starbucks hiding from my office? Or do I really want my parents to know that I'm partying when I should be actually working on my homework? So there are definitely some privacy issues that needs to be addressed, and that has to be totally personalized. So with great power comes great responsibility. Said Uncle Ben from Spider-Man, it has to be true. So with these wearable sensors, you do get a lot of flexibility and utility. But the way you build these sensors should be personalized, should be cognizant of the privacy and security issues that people might have. So I would leave you today with one thought. So when you go back home today, think about what you want these next generation wearables to do. And more importantly, think about what you want these next generation wearables not to do. Thank you.
Awesome. So that ends our first session of 3 speakers. I think the next part will say we have about 8 to 10 minutes of a short break that we can set up the next slides and everything. Our speakers are actually in the room if you want to talk with them directly and ask a few questions. And we hope you all hang around for session 2 of GridX. Thank you very much. Okay, welcome back to our second session of GridX. Some of you were here for the first session already, and some of you are new. So for those of you who are new, my name is Carl Steiner. I'm the Vice President for Research here at UMBC, and really thrilled to help host this event today. We first conceived GridX last year for our 50th anniversary to really highlight some of the amazing research going on amongst our faculty, but also conducted by our alumni. And if you can just help me give a quick hand to the first set of speakers, because I think they were all really amazing. So our second session, you see the speakers behind me, are continuing that tradition. And really the goal is to provide you with a look behind the scenes of the research, the scholarship, and the creative achievement that is really conducted by our faculty and our students here on campus, and obviously by our alumni. To introduce our second session, to get right to the point, here's Scott Casper, who is the Dean of our College of Arts, Humanities, and Social Sciences. Scott.
Thank you, Carl, and good morning, everyone. I hope we can give a big hand to Carl Steiner, who dreamed up GridX a year ago, and we're doing it again this year. Our first speaker in this panel is Sean Pang. He is a double alum of UMBC. He's a 7th-year English teacher in Montgomery County Public Schools, and he received his Master of Arts in Teaching English and Certificate of Teaching ESOL, that is English to Speakers of Other Languages, as well as his Bachelor of Arts in English with extended minors in Creative Writing and Philosophy. He is a busy man. In addition to leading the 9th grade team, he also sponsors 5 clubs, coaches 2 varsity volleyball teams, advises the national award-winning literary arts magazine, and coordinates a mentorship program for at-risk youths. As a result of his efforts, Sean received a proclamation from the City Council, letters of recognition from both Congressman John Delaney and Senator Chris Van Hollen, and he's been recognized by the Washington Post as this year's Teacher of the Year. Sean Pang's talk this morning, let's give him a hand on that. That's pretty great. Sean's talk this morning is called The Fortune of Misfortunes, Finding Passion and what to do with it. Sean Pang.
Thank you so much. Wow. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you so much for inviting me back to UMBC. And with a great confidence, I can say I am so glad to be home. UMBC has been my home for 6 years, from 2005 until 2011. As you can see here, there's my beautiful mug right here. This is back in 2009 when I graduated with my undergrad in English. This right here is actually my mom, not my sister, and I say that because I know she'll be watching this video later on. I then loved UMBC so much that I decided to get my master's here as well for 2 years. In 2009, I want to introduce you to two people real quick. This gentleman on the right was the first person I met at UMBC during student orientation. He later on became my best man at my wedding. He is my best friend, Brian, who's now a doctor. This lady on the left was the last person I met at UMBC, right after exams. And she was incredibly intelligent, completely out of my league, amazingly beautiful. And as Dr. Hrabowski has taught me, if you can't beat her, you marry her. So she's now my wife standing in the audience right there. So clearly, UMBC means a lot to me, and to be back at homecoming was just an honor and a pleasure. But I'll have to tell you this, UMBC was not my first home. It's not my second home. It's not even my fourth home. My home was Hong Kong. I was born in Hong Kong, and I was raised in Hong Kong. And it's a Chinese version of the place that never sleeps. And in Hong Kong, they say that it's just so congested that if everybody came down from the buildings, they wouldn't fit everybody on the streets. And it's just a crazy, crazy place. It's beautiful in its own way, but it's really just full of cement and concrete. I remember when I was little, I would just look up, and this would be the kind of scene that I would see. Not trees, not really the sky even. It's just people and more buildings. And so being young, I was growing up and accustomed to this culture. But it was my home, and I loved it until I moved to the United States. When I immigrated to the United States, it was this huge culture shock. From the people to the language to the food, everything was new. Can you spot where I am? In between crying and laughing at the same time, I was trying to smile. But from being a majority to now a minority, I had to adjust all of this. I went to school not to learn for that year. I went to school to survive that year. And as an immigrant to the United States, this was tough. This was really tough, especially when I had to go to the bathroom once, and I couldn't tell my teacher that because I didn't know the language for bathroom. There was that communication issue. And so I had to do gestures for about 2 minutes. In that case, that's when the teacher found out. It was a rough time for me. And there are many times that I didn't want to come to school. And there are many times that I didn't come to school because I faked being ill. And that was a rough time. But then I remembered this gentleman right here. His name is Jeremy Diamond, the weird kid making that face. He gives me this. This is something that I've held on to for 24 years. And it was my first real act of kindness. Can't see this? Here's a bigger view. It's a toy little dinosaur that I'm pretty sure Jeremy stole from the little playpen. But it means a lot to me. This act of kindness is something that we don't see very often, especially when we see somebody who's different from us. We usually tend to circle ourselves around people that we're accustomed to, people we're used to, people we're familiar to, and yet, there was no language barrier here. This was clear as crystal. I wanted to tell you 3 points. My first point is kindness is a universal language. And it's something that doesn't happen a whole often time. The more we're kind to each other, the more we open up. And that's going to lead a little bit to my speech today about finding passion. So obviously, I went on to graduate elementary school. I graduated from the ESOL program. But I still hang out with Jeremy. It was during my 7th birthday. We went to Chuck E. Cheese, which was actually unusual for me. Not just the big mouse and everything like that, but the fact that going out to celebrate with friends was unusual because, number one, I didn't have friends. I had Jeremy and a close 2 other friends. That was basically it. But then I realized that this wasn't necessarily a birthday party to celebrate my birthday. It was a farewell party. It was a farewell party because I was finally moving. After I was finally accustomed to American culture, to this elementary school, to my white friends, my black friends, there actually wasn't any Asian people there. I was only one. I had to move. And I was distraught. I was stressed. I had to move to another place, and I didn't know what to do. So my mom gives me one of the best advice that I'll hold on to forever. In an uncomfortable situation where I don't know what to do, try everything. Try everything, and I did. Never have I ever been camping before, because again, in this world of concrete that was Hong Kong, from skyscrapers to cities and all these things, I now have woods. This is a place that I can actually see water and trees and grass, green grass. And finally, I'm putt-putting for the first time, sledding for the first time, and I finally understood the meaning, let's go for a walk. Because nobody says that in Hong Kong, because you always had a mission, a place to go to in Hong Kong. But here, you walk just to walk? What? But in this case, we walked to enjoy the scenery with my 2 brothers. The third one came when I was in middle school. And so I finished middle school, I finished high school, and lo and behold, in 2005, I was accepted to UMBC, and then began my journey. But once again, I was forced to question, what am I doing with my life? What am I studying at UMBC? And what is my focus here? What do I want to do? And so taking my mom's suggestions, I tried everything. From my core courses to everything else, I want to tell you right now that the key to finding your passion is to try everything. And that holds true today. Because when I became a student at UMBC, I went from joining the volleyball team, I became a resident assistant for Residential Life. I did everything from working in the admissions office to the office of the registrar. I made degree audit. That was me, yeah. And all these things, I worked student orientations to advise other students what to do. But ultimately, I found that I wanted my passion in English because of this one advisor, Ms. Sally Shivnan, who still teaches here at UMBC. Sally Shivnan was an advisor to Bartleby, UMBC's literary arts journal, which is a fantastic program. But as an undecided major, I went into the English program curious, and she just welcomed me with open arms. That act of kindness led me to find my passion. Me going out of my comfort zone and finding other things I wasn't used to led me to my passion. And specifically, when Sally told me to join UMBC's Bartleby, I said yes. And in fact, I became the senior managing editor for 3 years. Even after I graduated from undergrad, I still keep in touch with Ms. Sally Shivnan, and we're really close buddies, as we can see, looking longingly into each other's eyes. But it was after my sophomore year when I found my passion in English, what I really wanted to do. That trouble kind of hit at home. It was the summer of 2007 when we were evicted from our home. We were never really rich. In my family background, we always grew up on free and reduced lunch. And then when our parents told us that we have to move everything within 24 hours notice, again, trouble has hit me. And again, we weren't really sure how to respond to that. Me just beginning my career in UMBC, beginning my major, and with 3 other brothers to take care of, 2 who's in college and 1's about to begin middle school, it was a hard choice for the entire Pang family. And so I came back to UMBC, needless to say, a little bit distraught, pretty sad, not sure what to do. Now, UMBC, one of the things that I've done, because I tried everything, was I continued this first job that I ever had at UMBC, which was what I call professional note taker. And what I did was I took notes for other people who have disabilities and who had trouble taking notes. And so one of the things I volunteered to do was also tutoring these people. And so one person I met was Joshua Cohen. Joshua Cohen was, I believe a junior as well, same year as me. And this is a philosophy class that we took. And I took notes for him, I had to tutor him. And I've taught him for maybe several months now, so we have a sort of relationship. And so when he asked how I was doing over the summer, I told him my story about being evicted. And then he tells me this. Now, first things first, this is what you have to know about Joshua. His mother has committed suicide when he was 6 years old. His father was mentally ill, his brother was addicted to drugs, and his girlfriend ran away from him with his money. And Josh, on top of all that, was visually impaired, hard of hearing, and also has this damage in the brain. And so I was humbled, not only because of what he has told me, but because of what he said. And he said this: there will be a time to feel sorry for yourself, but not when there's still so much to do for others. And I was like, wow. This man who has been through so much for himself and his family, he says this? He wanted to be a doctor as well. I haven't seen him in so many years, but I want to assume that this holds true, that he became a doctor. Wow. So on top of being kind, what I want you to know is hope is actually the greatest gift that you can give. Because of Joshua giving me hope that something better will come along, that there's other things to give other people, he has taught me that hope is the greatest gift. And that is how I found my other passion in becoming a teacher. And so I became a teacher to give hope, not just teach English, to give hope. And here, I said, okay, I graduated UMBC, I got through my master's, and they pushed me into my student teaching. I am ready to go, I am fired up. And so they chose me, where do I want to go? I'm like, okay, I want to go home to Montgomery County. They're like, great, you're going to Baltimore City. Can you see me? I remember that first year in Baltimore City, where crime rate and bullying and gangs and all that stuff existed, and there I was. I'm pretty sure the school had 2% Asian population, and I made up one of those percents. But in Baltimore City, this was the greatest thing that I ever had in my life. Because not only did it teach me to humble myself, but I remembered. I was there. This was me. How fortunate was it for me to have all my misfortunes? From learning a language to poverty, to all these things, my children are exposed to the same situations at home as I was. And when they see me come into school with a smile on my face, with passion and dedication and kindness, they see hope. Hope that something better will come out from their lives, regardless of whatever problem is going on right now. So I want to summarize 3 things. Number 1, be kind, because that will allow you to open up to others. Number 2, no matter what you do, remember that you got to try everything even if you don't think you like it, because that will lead you to find your passion. And with your passion, what do you do with it? You give hope. No matter what happens, no matter what field you're in, whether it's teaching, engineering, whether you're the president of UMBC, whether you're somebody who's still studying, think about how you want to contribute back to the world. Give hope. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. That was inspiring. Wonderful. Our second speaker is Dr. Jemima Slaughter. She's an associate professor of computer science and electrical engineering here at UMBC. She's currently director of the Bioelectronics Laboratory. Dr. Slaughter develops and applies sensor processor platforms focusing on innovative contributions to identifying a pathway to embed sensing and processing functions in the same device to eliminate bottlenecks arising from communication between the sensor, transducer, and processor, thus resulting in ultra-fast and ultra-low power devices. Her research has been supported by the National Science Foundation, the Department of the Army, TEDCO Maryland Innovation Initiative, and the Maryland Industry Partnership. Dr. Slaughter's research interests include biosensors, microsensors, microfabrication technology, and biomems. She is the recipient, and this is really something special, the recipient of the National Science Foundation's prestigious Career Award, which recognizes junior faculty who exemplify the role of teacher-scholar through outstanding research, excellent education, and the integration of education and research. And Dr. Slaughter's talk today is called The Art of Powering Implantable Electronics. Dr. Jemima Slaughter.
Thank you. Okay, that's it. If we think about it, we all use a variety of smart devices. The number of smart devices that we use in our everyday lives is continuously growing. This is even more so as we approach the ramping up of Internet of Things and 5G wireless technology. Now, if we look at what we're doing in terms of harnessing or collecting different wearable devices and implantable devices in terms of being able to implant it on our body, we quickly realize the common component between all of these devices. They need to be charged or powered. So let's take, for example, a wearable device such as the wristband. The wristband or a smartwatch requires us to continuously keep it powered or charged over time. So one of the quickest things we realize with implantable devices as well as wearable devices is that we need to find a way to maintain their power over time. So if we look at wearable devices, for example, that market is primarily composed of wristbands and smartwatches, whereas implantable device market is composed of pacemakers, insulin pumps, and neurostimulators. So when we look at the design behind these electronics devices, whether we're looking at implantable devices or wearable devices, all of them requires us, the end user, to take that device and plug it into a wired charger. Even if we look at the inductive charging solutions such as the Apple iPhones or the Samsung phone products, it still requires us to remove the device and place it on a charger. Hence, we clearly need a way to come up with a convenient and a proper way to keep our devices powered over time. So what we are, well, I went a little bit ahead. So until the next phase of human evolution endows us with more arms and fingers, we really need to come up with an innovative as well as a transformative way to keep our devices powered. So what I want us to do is I'm going in the wrong direction. What I want us to do is to take a look at some of the current developments that's occurring in the bioelectronics laboratory here at UMBC. So in our laboratory, what we are doing is we have developed a biosolution. And yes, this biosolution that we have developed allows us to use our body as a power source. So what I want us to be able to take away from this is I hope that this will enable a future designer's creative process to come up with a transformative solution that is so much needed in this field. So before we can start even thinking about using our body as a power source, it's important for us to understand how our bodies sustain life as we know it. Our body derives its energy source from the food we eat, such as carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. 55% of our energy comes from the carbohydrates that we eat. Carbohydrates are broken down into glucose by our digestive system and transported into our cells via our bloodstream, where it is converted into energy. So if you think about it, our body's main source of energy is glucose. And we have an abundant source of glucose in our body, and we can easily or readily replenish it through our metabolism. So in our laboratory, what we are doing is we're taking advantage of the fact that we have an abundant source of glucose. So we're taking blood glucose as well as oxygen, which acts as an oxidant, and we're bringing those together to enable a chemical reaction to occur that enables electrons to be generated. And when electrons flow, we have movement of charges, therefore, hence, we have electricity. So we have a way of generating bioelectricity. The chemical process that we use to convert the biochemical energy of glucose into bioelectricity ends up giving us a byproduct that is hardest to achieve in any battery technology. We end up with biofriendly, environmentally friendly water, thereby making our energy harnessing process biofriendly as well as a green alternative to the current conventional battery technologies. So we're going to take a look at the art behind powering implantable electronics. In our laboratory, what we're using nanocellulose as our canvas, the canvas onto which we design our electronic circuit as well as the electrodes that we modify with biorecognition elements to be able to harness the biochemical energy of glucose. Nanocellulose is a highly crystalline linear polymer of glucose, and it's the most abundant natural polymer available, and it has interesting and fascinating structures and properties such as being environmentally friendly, biofriendly, biodegradable, and biocompatible, with the added benefit of being transparent, flexible, and being permeable to liquids and gases. So we take this membrane and we actually design our circuits and our elements onto it. So the way we create nanocellulose is we use our small friends, G. xylanus. G. xylanus is a bacteria, and what they do is they synthesize cellulose and secrete them through their pores as they consume glucose. So the cellulose that they end up secreting are approximately 10 nanometers in diameter, and they start to bind to each other. And when they bind to each other, we get what is known as cellulose nanofibrils, and those are approximately 100 nanometers in diameter. And this binding process continues till we form a network morphology where to the point we can actually extract it as a millimeter thick hydrogel at the air-liquid interface. So depending on the type of growth fat that we use, we can get circular hydrogels or square hydrogels or rectangular hydrogels. But before we can actually end up using them, one of the things that we have to do is we have to thoroughly clean them. And then another important note is that G. xylanus, although we're thinking, okay, we're using bacteria to create this materials that I want to put in the body, how can you do that? Well, G. xylanus is our friend because they use it in food production. So it's used to make the nata de coco and the tapioca that we so much enjoy in our food products. So it's harmless. But before we can use it, we still have to thoroughly remove any sign of the bacteria and any residues of the bacteria. So what we do is we place it and we do a rinse in ethanol and then followed by boiling water and sodium hydroxide and then back into water. When we're done, we're able to extract it as a thick, millimeter thick hydrogel, and it's flexible and transparent, and then we can dry it. When we dry it, it becomes a micron thick cellulose membrane onto which we can write on, we can color, we can draw, we can do whatever we want to it. But what we choose to do in our laboratory is design circuits onto them so we have a flexible substrate that we can implant into the body that is conformal to whatever tissue is next to rather than being rigid. So the way we start out by designing our circuit is we use a computer-aided design tool. So in our lab, we use AutoCAD to design our circuits. Our circuits can range anywhere from being relatively simple to something that is relatively complex. And we use a Fujifilm Dymatics printer to print the wires and the electrode materials that we need to be able to successfully harness the biochemical energy of glucose. The reason why we use the Dymatics printer is it allows us to use a palladium catalyst. And also the reason behind using a palladium catalyst is we want to be able to somehow get metal onto a non-conducting material. And that's kind of hard to do, to get metal to deposit onto something that's not already a conductor. So we use the catalyst to initiate metallization through a process that we call an electroless plating process. And when we're done, we're able to get inert gold. After going through a 3-step process, we're able to get inert gold onto the cellulose material, signifying the routing for, I keep going backwards, the routing for our electrical circuits. So once we do this, we take low melting point solder, and we solder our circuit components as well as whatever it is that we want to power using glucose onto the cellulose membrane. So in this, I'm working with two things. In this schematic, what we have is our complete footprint for our system is 3 millimeters by 4 millimeters, so it's relatively small. It consists of an energy amplification circuit that we have integrated into the design, as well as the electrode pads to allow us to harness the biochemical energy of glucose. And we also connected, it's kind of hard to see, but a green LED into the circuit. A green LED requires approximately 3.25 volts in order to light up, and it needs a current of approximately 100 milliwatts. The system that we develop, when we harness the biochemical energy of glucose, we get approximately anywhere from 300 millivolts to 400 millivolts. So you're looking at me going, okay, you're gonna power that thing with 300 or 400 millivolts? Okay, now let me tell you how much current we get. 67 microamps. Okay, so, and I'm telling you, one day I am going to power implantable devices. So what we have done is we have actually incorporated energy amplification circuits that take that nominal power that's generated by glucose and actually light up the LED. So let's see. it's kind of hard to see because it's so small and it was hard to capture the picture. So if you look down there, we have the LED, and we're supplying anywhere between 300, it's actually 400 millivolt that's being generated and a current of 67 microamps, and we're able to light up the LED. So this gives us hope that eventually, with such a small device, we can develop a power system that harnesses the biochemical energy of glucose within our body to power implantable devices that can monitor diseases, diagnose diseases, and one day deliver therapeutics into our body to enable our body to heal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Slaughter. Our third speaker is Dr. Kate Brown, who is professor of history at UMBC. She is the author of Plutopia, Nuclear Families in Atomic Cities and the Great Soviet and American Plutonium Disasters, published by Oxford University Press in 2013, which won 7 prizes, including the Dunning and Beveridge Prizes from the American Historical Association. Dr. Brown's previous book, A Biography of No Place, From Ethnic Borderland to Soviet Heartland, was awarded the American Historical Association's George Louis Beer Prize for the best book in international European history. Her most recent book, Dispatches from Dystopia, History of Places Not Yet Forgotten, was published in 2015. Professor Brown is the recipient of many fellowships, including from the John D. Guggenheim Foundation, the American Council of Learned Societies, and the National Endowment for the Humanities. In 2017, she was a fellow at the American Academy in Berlin, and she is a Carnegie Fellow. She's currently writing a history of human survival and endurance in communities circling the Chernobyl zone. And her talk from today, which is connected to that project, is called The Great Chernobyl Mystery: How Ignorance Became Policy and Politics. Dr. Kate Brown.
Thanks, Scott. So, I actually want to tell you about my summer holiday instead of all that stuff about radiation. As part of writing this book about Chernobyl, I went to the Chernobyl zone, and a big part of the zone, the reactor was between Ukraine and Belarus in this area called Polesia, which is Europe's largest swamp, called the Pripyat Marshes. And right there in the middle of the swamp, they put these nuclear reactors, and reactor number 4 in 1986 blew up. And afterwards, a lot of people left. There was a lot of radiation, and people stayed. And so I went up to take a look at some of these communities in the summertime with my research assistant. And when I was heading up there, I thought, oh, this is going to be a really dreary trip. There's going to be a lot of people there who are, sad, elderly. The village is mostly depopulated. People are going to be gone. But what I found surprised me. There's, thriving communities, new housing starts, health clubs, hotels. And we asked, where's all the money coming from? This is the end of the world up here, and it's radioactive. And they said, berry picking. There are berry pickers everywhere. And that was this crazy thing. And we realized that there was a network set up, that they had people, these mostly women and children, are going into the forest and picking a big basket of berries every day. And you can see them here. And then they go out to the edge of the road. There's mostly women who are buying the berries. They have these vans and they buy the berries. And then the people who have the vans drive them to warehouses, and then they process the berries, and then they go into Poland, and from Poland they enter the EU market. And so here's the buyers, and here are the pickers, and they have this network of vans that runs the pickers around if you need to get someplace far. And so we decided we'd go berry picking too. We'd go undercover berry picking. And so this is, in the middle here is Oya, my Ukrainian research assistant. And so we bought this berry picking basket, which is radioactive, from this guy here. He sold it to us for $5. And we went into the forest, and then we picked some berries. And then here I am successfully selling my berries to the middle woman. And so then, as we went into the forest, we met a lot of young people. And take a look at her lips, right? She's a 12-year-old, and she picks some berries and she puts them in the basket, and she picks other berries and she puts them into her mouth. So now this isn't a new thing in this territory. There's not very good land for farming, and so a lot of people traditionally have used the forest products to subsist or survive in this area. They've been living off the forest products, these Pelesians forest products for the last 1,000 years. And even after 1986, they were told, don't pick the berries, don't pick the mushrooms. They still did, and they consumed these berries in their households. They sold them locally. What is new about what's going on now is the scale. It's been supersized. As of 2014, Ukraine has been exporting berries to Poland into the EU market, and now Ukraine has surpassed Canada as the biggest supplier of blueberries to Europe. They're at about 60,000 tons a year now, though the fruit lobby is not very happy to give me this information. It's a trade secret. So that's a lot of berries, right? And we went to the warehouse. We followed our berries with the wholesaler into the wholesale market. And this is a wholesale warehouse. And there's a very nice woman there who buys the berries. And before she buys the berries, she measures them. Because they've been trying to revitalize this region for a long time. UN agencies came in and tried to revitalize it. And they've managed to do it now with this global trade of blueberries. But nobody would have thought selling blueberries was a very good idea, because blueberries and mushrooms, which they pick later in the fall, are really super efficient plants, and they're the ones that are most efficient in picking up radiation from the soils and delivering them to the fruits, right? So they know these berries are going to be radioactive, and so she's measuring them out. And I went up to her and I said, so how many of these blueberries are radioactive? And she said, all the blueberries are radioactive, but some are really radioactive. Some are 3,000 becquerels a kilogram. I said, well, what's the permissible limit? She said 450. So she measured my berries, and she's got this little tiny mass spectrometer to do that, right there. And our berries came in at 350. So she bought our berries, and but I stood and watched, and the berries under 450 she put over here, and the berries over 450, and some of them could be 5 times over 450, she put over there. I said, so what are you going to do with those dirty berries? You're still buying them. And she sort of waved her hands, didn't answer, but the pickers told me, she said, well, they mix them, and then they get to an acceptable norm. The acceptable norm for Europe, for wild organic blueberries, is 1,250 becquerels a kilogram to enter the EU markets. They doubled it in 2016 from 600. So these berries freely go in, and if you just mix them, you get to the average, and then they freely go into the European markets. So in some ways, this is a good news story. They've been trying to, for the last 30 years since the accident, to economically revitalize this territory. UN agencies have come in to try to do it. International agencies have tried to do it, and they've failed. But these women and children pickers have made it happen with this human-powered resourcefulness. So economically, it's a good idea. What about biologically? That's a trickier question. The pickers, they were quite funny about it. They said, oh, you're from the West. You guys buy our wild organic blueberries, and we get back blueberry-flavored soda in exchange. And that was funny, right? Because they're talking about the traditional colonial exchange. More backward areas supply raw materials for lower prices, and they have to buy back processed goods that are more expensive. And they always are losing out in that exchange. And sure enough, they were sort of pointing out, for 25 bucks a day, we pick these berries, and we buy this soda for $1. But there's also an environmental justice story that's sort of overturned in this scenario, because usually in environmental justice stories, Poor people eat the most toxic products and live in the most toxic terrains. But here, these berries that are being marketed as wild and organic are being purchased by wealthy European consumers, and a strange sort of overturning of that. And here's the kids, as soon as they get their money from picking berries, they buy these great processed foods that come from our factories, right? But also, the question is how do Europeans feel about having a little bit of Chernobyl on their breakfast table each morning with their cereal? The strange thing I've found as I've done this Chernobyl research is there's been almost no research on the medical effects of long-term low doses of radiation. Almost nothing. And if I gave another talk, I could tell you why. There's very specific reasons about that, and those reasons aren't very good ones. But there has been one small study that's been done in exactly this region where they're picking the berries. And that study found that birth defects in that area, especially neurotube disorders, which includes conjoined twins, microcephaly, anencephaly, which means babies being born without heads, and spinal bifida, are 6 times higher in this area than the European norm. So again, how do Europeans feel about having these berries on their breakfast table? The amazing thing is they probably don't know about it. I found no public discussion of the doubling of the number of becquerels that could be in a kilogram of berries, a kilogram of any food in Europe than when it was raised last year. And then, what about Americans? Americans too haven't had a discussion about this, but a guy who's a radiation monitor on the border told me just a couple weeks ago that he said, oh, that's strange, we had this truck crossing the border from Canada into the United States, and there was this large radiating mass inside of the truck. Well, they opened the doors, sure enough, Ukrainian blueberries entering the US markets, radiating. Close the doors back up, let the truck go through, because our limit is 1,250 becquerels a kilogram, and those berries passed. So now I'm here to tell you that even though we think of Chernobyl as something that's very far away, it's being brought to us by the global markets that work so successfully. So we all are, in a way, becoming Pelesians biologically, step by step. So I could end the story there, but one of the things I've been thinking about, I've been working on questions of nuclear contamination for the last 10 years, and I got tired of writing just bad news stories, so I started to think, well, how could we fix this situation? And I was thinking, these berries and the mushrooms that they pick later in the season and export are so very good and efficient at soaking up radioactivity from the soils, from the surrounding environments, and placing them in the fruits. And the Soviets tried to do this in many different ways. The Americans are trying to do it in our contaminated lands with crazy expensive chemicals and moving soils and big bulldozers to try to decontaminate territories. And these programs usually fail. But these plants are actually extremely efficient and very good at doing just what we want them to do, which is to get rid of the radiation. So what if we had a plant people conspiracy where we use these plants and we pay these pickers to go out, pay them $25 a day to pick a bunch of berries, and then we take the berries and dispose of them as radioactive waste, where they belong, not on our breakfast tables. And we do the same thing later in August when they pick cranberries, and in the fall when they pick mushrooms. And then you plant cabbages, also very efficient. And then all these end-of-the-world tourists who love to go to the Chernobyl zone, they might even pay to pick radioactive berries and dispose of them in radioactive waste, right? And that might be a better way of solving this problem than just pretending it's not happening. Thank you.
Wow. Pick one more. Pick one more. That was awesome. Again, give all 3 speakers of this session a great big hand. We're going to need about 5-6 minutes to just change mics and presentations. And I invite you all to hang in here, stretch your legs, and we will start with the 3rd session in just a few minutes. Thank you. Everybody take their seats. So we already had two great sets of speakers, and we're ready for the third set of GridX 2017. Listen, help me give a hand to all the speakers that you've heard already. It's been pretty awesome to sort of travel around the world and travel from outer space to inner space. Actually, outer space is coming next, but you know, this is like a real journey through all of UMBC's research, scholarship, and creative achievement. And you're in for one more round of real treats. My name is Carl Steiner. I'm the Vice President for Research here, but I really want to thank the deans that are helping us introduce everybody, but really thank the faculty and the alumni who are such a big part of making this GridX successful. So on that very quick introduction, I want to hand over the mic to our new dean of the College of Engineering and Information Sciences, Dr. Keith Bowman.
Thank you, Carl. So I'm here to introduce Corey Fleischer. He's a retriever with a BS and an MS in mechanical engineering from UMBC. As a student, he received an undergraduate research award to conduct research with Professor Mark Zupan in the Department of Mechanical Engineering. He joined Lockheed Martin after graduation and rose through the ranks to become a senior mechanical engineer. In 2013, Mr. Fleischer was chosen to be part of Discovery Channel's The Big Brain Theory, Pure Genius, where he showed what a UMBC retriever can do by winning the competition. More recently, he became founder, thank you. He became co-founder and now serves as manager of The Foundry, a really awesome makerspace in Baltimore City I was fortunate enough to visit just a few weeks ago. Please welcome Corey to give his GridX talk, Building Founders the Old-Fashioned Way.
Thank you. All right, thank you. So I'm Corey Fleischer, co-founder and general manager at The Foundry, and I'll be talking about makerspaces and hardware incubators. So one of my favorite startup stories is Harley-Davidson. So in 1903, Harley-Davidson started in a 10-foot by 15-foot shed where two childhood friends built motorcycle engines and motorcycles. And they put together very crude prototypes. The motorcycles that they built and sold looked like motorcycles built in a shed. So they quickly, from 1903 to 1912, though, grew that business, outgrew their shed, and grew into a 6-story headquarters. Because all it took was a working prototype to be able to demonstrate the power and effectiveness of their motorcycles, and customers were lining up, including the US military. So I also like to build things that I can drive around. When I was at UMBC, I was very lucky to be a part of the UMBC Mini Baja team. So during this program, me and fellow students designed and built these single-passenger off-road vehicles, and we competed against other colleges from around the country. And during this experience, it was a very powerful experience because we were learning textbook knowledge in classrooms, but at the same time, we were learning how to weld, we were learning how to machine parts out of steel, and we were learning firsthand how to build things. So we were not only doing the textbook analysis and design work, but then we were building these components ourselves. After UMBC, I went on to work at Lockheed Martin, and immediately I was working on really awesome projects. I got to work on missile launcher systems and crew transfer systems, which were helping people get from the ocean surface 4 stories up to oil platforms for the typical work days. And while working on these projects, I felt that I was ahead of the curve compared to the other engineers my age. A lot of engineers were coming out of school with a lot of textbook experience and classroom knowledge, but didn't have a lot of hands-on fabrication. It was actually rare to find engineers who could actually build things with their hands. So these are some of the projects that I build. You can see I love to build things that I can drive around, right? It's my taste. Actually, in the upper left corner, the mini trike, and the lower right, motorized bar stool, I built those at UMBC in the Mini Baja shop while I was a student here. All these projects here were built outside of classrooms, outside of the workplace. These are stuff that I did in my own time just because I love to build things. So I'm considered a maker, right? Maker is a kind of a trendy term to describe people who build things. I don't really like the term because I feel that long ago it was more popular to build things. I remember my grandfather had a basement filled with woodworking equipment, and he never considered himself a maker. He just made things. Today, I still think it's in our genes to want to build things. If you look at kids with Legos, most kids grew up, and still today, I encourage my kids to be curious and take things apart if they want to see how things work. Unfortunately, iPhones and iPads don't have screws these days, so kids really can't take those things apart. But right now, it's a great time to be a maker and to be into building things. In the past 10, 20 years, there's been a revolution in the type of tools that we can use as makers. Right? We have 3D modeling software. So now, and there's free versions for households where kids can learn Google SketchUp, which is a free 3D modeling software. So you can design things in three-dimensional virtual space on a computer, rotate things around, test fit the components. We also have, in the upper right corner, microcontrollers. That's an Arduino. It's a microcontroller the size of a credit card, and you can use that to program robotics and to build robotic projects. In the lower left, that's an example of TIG welding. Manufacturing tools are going through a revolution. Welding systems used to be the size of refrigerators just 20, 30 years ago. Now they have welders the size of a lunchbox. So it's very approachable to to everyday people. In the lower right is an example of computer-aided manufacturing tools. Now we have 3D printers, CNC routers, and things that are becoming at a price point where people can, almost every household can afford 3D printers these days, and you can design and build something in your living room that 20, 30 years ago people couldn't build in a workshop. So not only is it a great time to be a maker because of the access to tools, but also it's becoming popular, right? I tell my wife that it's cool to be a maker these days. My skills, my ability to design and build things got me on Discovery Channel for The Big Brain Theory, which is a competition-based reality show where they had 10 engineers, inventors, and scientists, and we had to compete to build things. And if it wasn't for the popularity of that maker culture, Discovery Channel would have never, set aside the funds to launch the show. So while I was on the TV show, I actually met a fellow contestant, Guy, who ran a makerspace in Boston called Artisans Asylum. So a makerspace is community access to tools and training. That's kind of the tagline. What a makerspace is it's kind of like a fitness center. Instead of, gyms have advanced exercise equipment and they teach classes like yoga, things like that. Well, makerspace is the same principle, but you have access to tools. So members can come pay a monthly membership rate and have access to industrial-sized tools and also classes on how to weld, how to use 3D printers, and things like that. So up here on the left is an example of something that came out of the Makerspace Artisans Asylum in Boston. A group of members there built a 4,000-pound hexapod, which is basically a walking robot that fits 2 passengers. The 3Doodler pen, which is a 3D printing pen, came out of Artisans Asylum, and that went on to raise $1.5 million on Kickstarter. The Square, which is a hardware startup that allows people to accept credit card payments through smartphones or tablets, that came out of Tech Shop, which is a makerspace in San Francisco, went on to raise $10 million in capital investment. So when I found out about Artisans Asylum up in Boston, I was jealous that there was a space in Boston where anyone could go and have access to these tools to build any cool project they could think of. I knew that there wasn't one in Baltimore, and I wanted one, not only for myself, but I believe there's a lot of people in Baltimore could benefit from this space. So I teamed up with Jason Hardebeck in Baltimore, and we started the Foundry, which we started in a 2,000 square foot row house in Central Avenue. And this building, we considered our MVP, our minimal viable product. So it was a 12-foot wide warehouse where we taught welding classes and CNC laser engraving. And our goal there was to see if there was more makers in Baltimore that were interested in a space like this. So we threw it out there, and this was definitely a minimal viable product, right? There was no heating, no air conditioning. The bathroom looked like something out of a horror movie. But the welding classes we threw out there, we had about 5 or 6 welding classes a month, and we were selling out weeks ahead of schedule. Our CNC laser classes were always selling out. We always had members coming in during our open hack nights where we're encouraging people to come in together at the same time to work on projects. And it really validated this concept that Baltimore needed a makerspace. So in 2015, we partnered with Plank Industries here in Baltimore, and we grew into a 19,000 square foot facility. So this is our current facility. We have industrial grade tools. We have an elaborate wood shop, metal shop, a great welding area. We do powder coating. We have CNC manufacturing tools. Pretty much our goal here is to have anybody walk in with a hand sketch on a napkin for a product or an invention they want to build, and with our tools and classes, be able to walk out with a polished, professional-looking prototype. So hardware startups are nothing new. There's a lot of well-known companies that started in garages. Apple Computer, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak started, with the early Apple computers. They were learning woodworking skills to build wood cases for these computers. Tony Maglica, who created Maglite, put a down payment on a lathe to start prototyping his flashlight, which he went on to, they were bringing in over $100 million in 2003. Yankee Candle, started by a 16-year-old in a garage and went on to, it was recently sold for $1.75 billion. And this is what we want. We want the foundry to be these garages and sheds for startups, right? We want people with ideas and prototypes, or people with an idea that need a prototype to come to the foundry. Not only do we provide access to tools and training, but one of the best values added that we provide are the access to the community. We have mechanical engineers working next to electrical engineers. We have people that are on their second or third product that they're developing who serve as mentors to other people starting out. We have people who have written patents on their own so they can help out kind of direct these younger entrepreneurs with how to protect their intellectual property. So just a couple examples. With our mission set out, we're already kind of seeing this come to fruition. Jamie Hodges here came up with an idea for an improved leveling dock hold down. It's basically a system that is underneath most loading docks. He'd been selling them for many years, and he had an idea to improve upon a 20-year-old design. So 4 years leading up to the foundry, he had been working, and he was designing parts, sending it out to manufacturing facilities and getting parts back. And he found out about the foundry and knew it was exactly what he needed. So he was one of our first members, and in 4 months, he says that he accomplished more than the 4 years leading up to that. Instead of designing parts and sending out drawings to a manufacturing place and then waiting for them to come in, seeing if they fit right, he's able to do the CAD work, cut the parts out on our water jet, in the same day, test fit them onto his system, and if it needed adjustment, he could tweak his model and go right back to the water jet. He wasn't waiting 6 months for iterations. He was doing design iterations in 2 days. Now Jamie is doing small-scale production at our facility. He's actually putting them together, welding them, powder coating them, boxing them, and then delivering them to local customers in Baltimore. Another great example of our success story is Nick Carlson here. Nick Carlson owned a landscaping company, and he was timing his employees, and he found out his employees were spending more time unloading mulch from the back of pickup trucks onto wheelbarrows than they were actually using those wheelbarrows to disperse the mulch around properties. So he came up with an idea for a mechanical system to pull mulch from the back of the bed of pickup trucks and then spit it out the side onto a wheelbarrow. And he leveraged pretty much every resource we had at the foundry. He took our 3D modeling classes, our water jet class, and he reached out to other members that were experts at 3D modeling. So in the upper right is a detailed rendering of a 3D model that he actually paid another one of our members to do for him. And then he paid another electrical engineer at the foundry to do all of his wiring and electrical design. And now Nick has a working prototype that doesn't look like it was built in a small shed. I mean, his prototype looks polished, looks like it came out of a factory line. And it's turnkey, so when he goes to demonstrate to a customer, he pushes a button and it spits out, 5 pounds of mulch a second into a wheelbarrow. So he's using that to, generate sales. And he's already looking at warehouses. And pretty soon he'll be doing his first production run of the Mulchmate. So anyone that comes into the foundry, I want them to know that failure is an empowering way to learn, right? When people set out to create a prototype, they're going to fail. So when you fail, you build something that doesn't work quite right the first time, and then you go back and redesign it and you get it to work, you're now a subject matter expert for that system. So I tell everyone to fail faster, right? The best way to succeed is to learn all those lessons as quickly as you can. So prototype fast and solve one problem and get to your next failure. Also, strong, successful companies have humble beginnings, right? There's a lot of quick, popular startups like Uber and Facebook that kind of seem to pop up overnight. And that's what most people think of software when they hear these fast-moving startups. But there's a lot of hardware startups out there, and a lot of them started in sheds and garages. And it takes special people with a special product to become a successful hardware startup. So access to tools and access to the mentorships and community shouldn't be the biggest roadblock. Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. Professor T. Jane Turner is director of the Center for Space Science and Technology. After receiving a BS degree in mathematics and astronomy, she received a PhD in physics. Dr. Turner worked previously for the University Space Research Association and NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center before joining UMBC full-time as a professor of physics. Her research includes the use of X-rays to study phenomena in space, including the properties of black holes. Please welcome Dr. Turner to tell us, "Here be dragons."
Here to tell you about supermassive black holes in galaxy nuclei. And the title of my talk, it relates to historic seafaring maps where people would mark, here be dragons, where there was something that was completely unknown. And so I like to use that analogy. So if you want to understand the universe, the best place to start looking is essentially in your own backyard. And what you can see on the left is some of the star orbits close to our galaxy's center, the Milky Way center. And so up in the top right-hand corner of that, you can see the year clicking by. So this is data taken over a few years. Each of those points is a star, and you can see its orbit being traced out. Then the little star icon marks an unseen object. You can't see any light from it, but it's the position of something that's exerting gravitational influence and causing those stars to orbit the way that you can see. So if we put the orbital data together in the right-hand plot, each of those black points represents one of those stars, and you can see on the x-axis its distance away from this mysterious object. And on the y-axis, because we understand physics and we have laws of gravity, we can use those orbits to figure out the mass that these stars are orbiting around. So from looking at these stars, we can find out that in the center of our Milky Way galaxy, there's a black hole of 2.6 million solar masses, so 2.6 million times the mass of our star. And yet we can't see it. Except for its gravitational influence, we wouldn't know it's there. So we can go out and look and see if this is typical for galaxies. Is there something special about the Milky Way, or is this true for other galaxies? And this is a picture showing the wealth of other galaxies out there. They're all different sizes and shapes. And if we do a survey, we can go and do a similar measurement in other galaxies. So look at stellar orbits or other indicators of a large gravitating mass in galaxy nuclei. So when we do that, what we find is remarkable, that there's evidence for some supermassive black hole at the center of all galaxy nuclei. And this is one of the big discoveries of the last decade or so in astronomy. So we can do something more sophisticated, which is to go and make a measurement of those masses in the way I just described, and that's plotted on the y-axis. And we can also measure the amount of mass in the host galaxy that this thing is residing in. And that's shown on the x-axis, and you can see numbers. The larger galaxies have about 1 trillion stars, 10 to the 12 stars. And what you'll immediately see is that there's a correlation between these two quantities. So this is a remarkably good correlation as things go in physics. The larger mass, bulge mass, is approximately the same as the total mass of the galaxy. So the larger mass galaxies seem to have the biggest, most massive black holes. This tells us something very important, that these things must grow together. If they didn't grow together, then you sometimes get a low-mass black hole in a very massive galaxy. So this remarkably strong correlation means they must grow together. And this is very important in understanding the connection between black holes and galaxies and the growth of structure in the universe on the whole. So most of these, as I've just said, you can detect them by their gravitational influence. It turns out a few percent are lit up, they're turned on. And these are the ones we call active galactic nuclei. So in a few percent of cases, something about the system is causing a large amount of light to come out from close to that black hole. Most of them look quiescent, just a few look very bright. And these two pictures show you the contrast in how those two cases look. On the left, we've got a beautiful spiral galaxy. The black hole in that case is quiescent. On the right, what you can see, that very bright object, is actually a galaxy as well. It looks like a star. So in that right-hand frame, you can see a bright point source, and that cross shape is to do with the instrument that took the picture. A little to the left of it is a star. You can't tell them apart. You'd just think that in the bottom right, it was a brighter star. But the bottom right is an active galaxy, and it's 1 million times further away than that star in the same picture. And because the intensity of radiation falls off as 1 over distance squared, that means it must be more than 1 million times brighter than that star. So these are incredibly powerful things. And for a long time, we didn't understand the nature of them. Some of them are so bright, you can't even tell that they're in galaxies. So we're back to our survey of the universe. We've established that every galaxy's got a supermassive black hole between 1 million and 1 billion solar masses. Just a few of them are switched on. So why are those switched on, and what does that tell us fundamentally about how the universe has come to look the way it looks? So if we look a little bit closer at the nucleus of some of these systems, maybe we can figure out how they're producing so much light. And our thought is that material must be streaming somehow from the galaxy on towards the black hole, falling down that gravitational potential well, like water down a drain hole. So this red stream of material is an artist's representation of material falling in under the gravitational influence of the unseen black hole. And that black hole will be at the center there. You can't see it, but you can see a lot of radiation coming from close to it. So as material falls in that gravitational potential, the disk that's formed has a lot of friction in it, and so radiates a lot of light, and that's how we convert the gravitational potential energy into radiative energy, and that's the fundamental source of energy, we think, close to the black hole of these active galactic nuclei. So the size of that region, that disk I just showed, is very close to the black hole. So the size of that black hole and its immediate environs is roughly the size of our solar system. And just to give you some idea of the perspective on that, this active nuclear region, compared to the galaxy, scales the same way as an orange to the size of the Earth. So this is a very small region at the center of a galaxy. And yet, it can dominate the light that you see. So how are we getting this energy out, and what can we learn from that? You remember E equals mc squared, the simplest form of Einstein's famous equation that tells you how to extract energy from mass and how much energy you'll get by destroying mass. So in real life, there's some efficiency factor associated with that. You might not completely destroy some mass and extract all of the energy, you might extract a little bit of it. So I've got some examples here of a petrol gas engine. We've got this factor of 5 times 10 to the minus 11. That's a very small efficiency for that process. So we're looking at measuring a large amount of light from a region that we know is tiny. What process is consistent with producing that much power in such a small space? We have to step through some of the other things we know that are a bit more efficient. Well, how about nuclear fusion? That's what powers stars individually. Maybe we can cram enough into this small space and produce enough light. We know the efficiency of nuclear fusion. And up here, we've increased by a factor of 100 million to have E equals 0.005 mc squared, and c is the speed of light. So it turns out even that isn't an explanation for the amount of light we see. So we step things up a little bit more and go to what we call accretion. Accretion, in essence, is that movie I just showed you, that stream of material falling down, losing gravitational potential energy, getting close to the black hole. That can be very efficient. It's got an efficiency maybe up to 10%, so we could have E equals 0.1 mc squared. It turns out that does match the observables that we see. But that mass is the mass that's accreting. It's not the mass of the black hole. So we know how much energy we see. We can measure the amount of light we see and figure out how much mass we need to tear apart in order to produce that through this accretion process. And it turns out the answer is less than 1 solar mass per year. So if we can shred 1 star per year, we can feed these active nuclei. So it doesn't take much when you think about the fact that these galaxies, as I mentioned earlier, have about 1 trillion stars in them. So why are X-rays interesting? And this is what I've devoted my life's work to. This is, again, an artist's impression of very close in to the center of that thing, this tiny, tiny region. The black hole's hidden somewhere down in the middle of that white area. This is the shape of the material as it gets close to the black hole from theoretical models. So we think we've got this gas swirling in. Of course, we don't see anything from within the event horizon, but we can see things going on just outside of that. And that's where we're learning about how these things work. So if we look in detail, we expect the X-rays to come from very close to the event horizon. It's the frequency of light where we can observe things that are right down in that region of interest. So let's look at some X-rays and see what we can learn about the immediate environs of the black hole. And we need to use satellites to do this. And the picture at the top shows you why. The picture at the top is photon frequency, and it's showing how far into the Earth's atmosphere those photons penetrate. And you know that the visible light comes all the way down to the ground. We're used to seeing ground-based optical telescopes and also radio telescopes, such as the one at Green Bank. But if you can see those black lines, the X-rays don't make it all the way through the atmosphere. So we need to put a satellite up high enough to measure things from other galaxies in the X-ray band. So at the bottom, I've got some of the current X-ray missions that are in flight. On the bottom right of particular interest is the Chandra X-ray satellite, which is the X-ray equivalent of Hubble Space Telescope. So what do we measure when we go up and look at some of these galaxy nuclei with our X-ray satellites? We can make a spectrum, and that's shown in this panel at the bottom left. So what a spectrum is a measure of, on the y-axis, how many photons you're getting, versus some measure of the photon energy. So whether you've got soft X-rays like you use in the dentist's office or harder X-rays with more energy. So we're measuring how many photons there are at each of those different X-ray energies. And you can see a lot of bumps and wiggles. So these bumps and wiggles tell us that the X-rays are interacting with gas close to the black hole. And the details of those bumps and wiggles tell us the physical state of the gas, how ionized it is, how excited it is, what the chemical composition is, what the kinematics are. Is it flowing out from the black hole, flowing into the black hole, or swirling around it? And how much of that stuff is there? So in the X-ray band, we can make a measure of the state of the material close to the event horizon and whether it's moving inwards or outwards. And this is how we're going to be able to understand the connection between the growth of this black hole and the host galaxy. We want to understand the material flow in through this accretion process, and then whether some is being returned back out to the galaxy. Is there this strong connection? And I'm showing a cover from Nature, and on the team were 2 visiting scientists to UMBC in the last couple of years, so this has a connection with our institution. And it made the cover of Nature. It's showing the disk around a black hole, and the disk is this accreting material, so that's the stuff moving in. And then these authors discovered that a lot of that material is lifted from the surface of the disk and then pushed back out into the galaxy, and that's the swirly pattern that you can see coming off the surface. And what was most important and why this made the cover of Nature was because they measured that there's enough of that material that it's carrying a lot of mass and energy back from the nuclear regions back into the host galaxy, is to the degree that it would affect star formation in the host galaxy. And this was the best measurement of that process that had been made to date. So that was a big step forward. So just to summarize, we've got supermassive black holes in the center of all galaxy nuclei, and studying these is important to understanding the growth of structure in the universe. So we can learn a number of things. We can also use this as an extreme laboratory for physics. It's a strong gravity regime we can't study anywhere else in the universe. So we're getting an opportunity to study extreme physics and ultimately to understand how the universe grew to look the way it looks today. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Turner. Doug Hamby is the director of the Linehan Artist Scholars Program and an associate professor in dance. He has a BS degree in biological science from Michigan State University and a master's in fine arts in dance and choreography from Temple University. He has taught at UMBC for 31 years and has received awards for his choreography from the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York State Council for the Arts, and the Maryland State Arts Council. He has worked with creative people from many fields, including mechanical engineers, to create dances that explore the potential of human movement. Please welcome Professor Hamby as he talks about making dance.
Thank you, Keith. I'm not sure why you're laughing. When I make a dance, I like to think of it as an investigation of the human body in motion and in space and in time. So what I thought we'd do today is, with the help of Emily and Sammy, we would make a dance together right in front of your eyes. Are you ready, dancers? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to label various directions in the room. So see if you can remember this. This corner is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. You're number 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to ask the dancers to move this part of their rib cage to various directions based on their social security number for the first section of our dance. Again, I'm not sure why you're laughing. And so if my social security number was 1, 2, 3, the first movements of my dance phrase would be 1, 2, 3. See if you can pick up what their social security number is and what they do. Now, the social security number has a dash in it. So when we get to the dash, it'll be like a wild card and they can do whatever they want. Okay, are you ready? You know your number? This is an experiment. Let's see how it comes out. And begin. And cha, ti, ta, cha, da, da, cha, and dash. And da, da, dash. And da, 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 and finish. Okay, how'd it go? Good. All right, let's travel downstage while you do it. Downstage is theater talk, meaning close to the audience. Okay, ready? And I'll be the music. Ready? And a go, and a ba, beep, ba, 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 ba. Dash, and a ba, da, ba. Dash, and a da, 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 da. Okay, good. Section 1. Section 2, I'm going to tell you what to do. And Sammy, I want you to come over here and stab your arm out like that. 1, 2, 3. Good. And Emily, you run around this way, put your hand on her, lift this leg up, and come around this way. Good, Emily. Good. And now releve, face her. That's right. And then plie. And good. Now you plie too, Sammy. And pull her into you. Let's see what happens. Good. And when you do that, okay, you can put her down now. When you do that, travel backwards, okay? But watch out for the grit X over here. Okay, so do that. Ready? And plie. And jump. Good, okay? Now let Emily down. Emily, you roll in a somersault just for fun. Good job. Good, and you move down, upstage of her. And why don't you lean against her like that, like a pyramid. Good. Now spin around to the left. Good. Yeah, whatever, yeah. And then take your, let's say, your right arm and come around this way with your right arm and scoop Emily up again. And scoop her up. And you got all this? And let her slide down. Down, plie. And spill. Spill. Both of you spill. Yeah, good. Good spilling. Good. Good. And then roll 3 times. 1, 2, 3. Good. Okay, we better review that, okay? Wow. Okay, ready? I will help you. Go and a poke, 2, 3, and circle, 2, 3, and rise, 2, 3, and lower, 2, 3, and jump, 2, 3, and roll, and brace, and around, 2, 3, and circle, and then scoop, and put her down, and da-da, da-da-dee, da-da. I love being the music. Good. Okay. Now, good. The next thing, do these. I'm going to do some gestures, and you'll do the gesture, but you can go anywhere you want or do anything you want from the waist down. Okay? And you can do it with any arm you want. It's always good to give the dancers a little freedom. Okay. First gesture. 1, 2, 3. Second one. Releve and touch your heart. Look up. 2, 2. 3, and then travel and make what I call a safe gesture like that. 3, 2, 3. Good. Take both hands, touch either side of your pelvis in a twist and a squat. 4, 2, 3. And just for fun, put one of your forearms on the floor. 5, 2, 3. Got this? And they're very smart, aren't they? And thread the needle this way. 6, 2, 3. You could roll if you want when you do that. And then stand up. 7. This is the last one. Bring your arms to second position. And you can turn any way you wish in second position. Okay? Go. Turn. Great. Good. Let's review that. Okay? Let's see. I will help you, I hope. Ready, set, go. And 1, 2, 3, and a 2, and a 2, and a 3, and a 3, 2, 3, and 4, touch, 3, and 4, and thread the needle, 3, get up, 2, 3, and spin. Good. Okay, so Emily, here, face your partner. Now you're going to do the Social Security sequence again, and we're going to rotate the room, hang on, 90 degrees, okay? So you'll back up and you'll move forward. Ready? Let's try it and go and ka-chunk. Beep, ba, 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 da, da, ba, beep, ba, and ba, 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 beep, ba, ba, ba. If only I could remember, da, da, finish. Good. Okay, that's 4 sections. You got all that? Let me see. Okay, the last section, let's recapitulate the second section, the lifting part, and you get to put in a turn of your own choice wherever you want and as frequently as you want, okay? And then when we get over here, I think you're going to get over here, you melt down and roll on the floor 3 times, and that will be the end of our dance. Okay? You want to try that with the turning? Let's try it. We have, yeah. Yeah, this is the fun part, figuring it out. Ready, set, and go, and 1 and 2 and 3 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 3 and 2 and 3, 4 and 2 and 3 and jump 2, 3 and back, turning da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da dee around 2, 3 and da. Dee da 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 da. Good. And then spill. 2, 3. I feel like a referee. Da 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 da. And the end. All right. Good. Let's try it. Okay. Now see if you can stay downstage a little bit, because I'd like you to be in the light so we can see you. Okay. Do you need to? And you can think about this. Go ahead, 10 seconds. Yeah. And so we're going to use music now. And I've chosen a piece of music that they have not heard. And we're just going to see if we slap it together to see what happens. Okay? Because that's one of the ways art is made, through serendipity and experimentation. Okay? And as we all know, if you don't know what you're doing, we'll never know the difference. Okay? Brad or someone up there, can you ready with the music? I will cue you, okay? I'm going to go over here where it's safe. Ready, music, please. A little louder. Ready, go. Well, that was, thank you. That was pretty amazing, all that you can just go push in, go record, and just do it. Yes. So that's how a dance is made. So next time you come to campus, call me up if you have your dance ready for me to see. Thank you for coming. Did you bow? Yeah, bow.
Take another bow here. Come on.
Again.
Come on.
Good.
Standing ovation. Come on. I want to see some enthusiasm here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So this brings us to the end of GridX 2017. I promised you a ride from outer space to inner space, from the classroom to the dance floor, from the maker space to many other places out there. Thank you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of homecoming, and I hope you'll be back here for what I think will be GridX 2018. You guys are awesome.